Welcome to the Mick, a Mook, and a Mike. Hosted by four-time Emmy-nominated producer Frank Mace and retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor. Today's guest, four-time Olympic gold medal winner, broadcaster, and motivational speaker, John Naber.
My brother Frank. How you doing, pal? How you doing?
I'm doing fine. You're sitting next to me. That means we must have a guest today.
In the studio.
But before we get to the guest, what are your memories of the 70s?
Well, they say if you remember the 60s and 70s, you weren't there. So, I was on the rampage. I just came back from Nam in 70. And I remember when I did come back, everybody used to say to me, no matter what they say to me, I would always go, huh. And then I realized I had smoked so much pot overseas, I guess I was smoking 20, 30 joints a day. Apparently it does have a long-range effect, contrary to popular belief at the time. But I was on the rampage. I was still looking to just get drunk and loaded as much as I could. And not so much forget Nam. I mean, a lot of guys had memories of Nam and they wanted to forget. They wanted to drink or do drugs to forget. I just wanted to carry out what I was doing, which is pretty much what I was doing over there,
But do you remember 1976?
The Olympics.
Do you remember our guest, John Naber?
I do now. I mean, now that you segue so brilliantly into John Naber here, I do indeed remember him.
Our guest today is John Naber. How are you, my friend?
Destroyed it up there.
I'm a happy guy. Life has been good.
Life has been good.
That's good to hear.
Did you, when you won your 4 gold medals in 1976, did you ever think that life would turn out the way it has?
Absolutely not. At the time, it was just a swim meet. At the time, it was an amateur era. You don't get paid. You couldn't have an endorsement. You couldn't get prize money. There was no speaking fees allowed. You could actually lose your eligibility if you were digging ditches for a living because somebody felt you were exercising and being paid to do so. So those days were a lot different. And when I started swimming, my goal was just to get to the wall as fast as possible. I actually wanted to be an Olympian before I learned how to swim. And it wasn't swimming that I thought would take me there.
What did you think would take you there?
Well, I'm the second of 4 kids. And the family of 6 lived in Europe for 7 years. And every summer, Dad would take us all on a European vacation. When I was 10, we did an ocean cruise in the Med, and it stopped near Olympia, Greece. So we got off the boat, took a little bus ride, and then had a tour guide talk us through the ancient Olympic site. And the purpose of the ancient Olympic Games was not to honor the athletes, but rather allow the athletes to honor God through their physical performance. And it was all about sportsmanship and fair play. And if you got caught cheating, they would carve a statue in your honor and put it in a hall of shame and make your hometown pay for it. And I said to myself, wow, this program is all about sportsmanship. Mom, I want to be an Olympian someday. And she looks at me and she goes, really? What sport? I don't know, but I'll find one. And 13 years later, I discovered the sport of swimming. And 7 years after that, I was competing in the Olympics.
Wow. It took you only 7 years.
Well, it was a pretty short term for me. I did get the most improved award the first 3 years I swam. I'm not very gifted athletically. I'm not a land mammal. I am tall, 6.5 feet tall. First day of high school PE back from Europe, I was the first kid picked for the basketball team. On the second day of high school PE, I was the last kid picked for the basketball team.
Wasn't going to be the Olympics in that arena.
No. It's a good sport, but I couldn't dribble, shoot, pass, or, anyway.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. You were 13 when you started swimming. Is that right?
Started competitively swimming. I learned how to swim at age 6.
And then by a senior year in high school, you had already set an American record.
That is true. Yeah, that's like I said, most improved 3 years in a row. And I had some good role models. I had a great coach. And my focus was on the stopwatch. I came home from swim meets and Dad never said, did you win? He said, what was your time? Before there was an Excel spreadsheet, he created a spreadsheet on a piece of paper with the different events on the program across the top, 100 back, 200 back, 100 free, 200 free. And down the side, he listed the meets I was competing in, the Fremont Hills Country Club, the Alpine, whatever. And then whenever I would swim, we would enter my time in the corresponding box. And if it was my personal best time, he would put a big felt tip circle around it with one of those flare felt tip pens. And the percentage of circles to the percentage of swims was my reward. And 2 out of 3 swims, I was doing best times because I was so slow to start.
Right.
I had nowhere to go but up. Now, obviously, at the time, I would swim, say, the 200-yard. First time I swam it, 2 minutes and 30 seconds. The second time I swam it, 2 minutes and 25 seconds. So I'm thinking mathematically, I got to swim it 5 more times and I'll break 2 minutes.
Nice.
The linear improvement. I learned later that improvement is more of a hyperbolic curve and not quite so fast. But my attitude was such that I was all in favor of it. You know, the glass half full, half empty test?
Right.
My mom took a 16-ounce tumbler with 8 ounces of water and she said, "What do you see?" And I said, "It's a glass full of water." Not half full, full of water. I have always been very optimistic.
Big time optimist.
And so, you know, I use that. I teach that it's better to think the positive thoughts. You might be wrong some of the time, but if you think negative thoughts, why be right?
Good point. Your father sounds like a pragmatist. So what did your father do for a living?
You're absolutely right. He was a management consultant, an efficiency expert. And he would work for a big 8 firm at the time called Booz Allen. It's a major international firm. And he would study companies and see how I can make this more efficient, more effective. And the first page of every report he filed had his favorite quote. It said, "Your company is ideally engineered to get the results you're getting now."
That's pretty profound.
It's pretty profound. It is. It means you're not working at.
If you don't like the results you're getting now, let's change the engineering.
Correct.
Unbelievable.
Exactly. But if you're happy, then don't change anything. Anyway, you're a bright man.
So he was a driving force, or just your own?
I think his attitude carried over to me. My mom was the storyteller. And as you can tell, I enjoy telling stories.
You think?
Well, I think we think that way. We think in terms of stories.
Sure.
And so I got that from her. So I'm proud to represent both my parents, God bless their souls, in whatever it is I try to do.
You know, something I didn't think I was going to ask you, but sitting here talking to you, you remind me of sort of a little John Wooden.
Yeah. I take that as great flattery. I had the opportunity to meet John Wooden, and I'll tell you a wonderful John Wooden, Louis Zamperini story later in the talk. But I love John Wooden. And one of the things I think I have in common with him, I was at an event, and the speaker asked everybody in the audience to define themselves with a single word. And John Wooden defined himself, do you know as what?
I don't know.
As a teacher.
Right.
I think you make reference
I
to
do
this.
know that.
Right?
I do know.
I said the word teacher. If I could choose to summarize what it is I do, I think I like to teach. I like to convey information, change people's lives, you know, in some way make their lives a little bit better. I've often said that the skill of swimming quickly while on your back is of limited value in society at large. So how can I use those years of training and being the best in the world at something to benefit somebody else? And that led me into the broadcasting and the motivational speaking and the book writing.
And of course, Awaken the Olympian Within. I mean, that has to be a motivational book.
Plug. Frank sent me his book.
And Billy's book.
And Billy's book, your book, autographed, and I'm delighted to have it. And so I'm going to offer you guys your choice of one of my 3 books. The first book I published in 2002 is called Awaken the Olympian Within. And it's a collection of motivational speeches and stories by 28 different Olympians. I asked them, what did sport teach you that enables you to be successful in life? And so some of them talk about attention to detail. Some of them talk about teamwork. Some of them talk about innovation. You got a Dick Fosbury story. You got a Rowdy Gaines story. You got a Karch Karai story. So anyway, lots of little different stories that help us be better people.
By the way, let me just interject. You just spoke at Dick Fosbury's funeral. Is that correct?
I did. Dick passed away about a month ago, and we celebrated his life here in Los Angeles at the LA 84 Foundation, and it was wonderful. It was an Olympians only celebration. There's a family celebration that's taking place,
right,
but this was just for Olympians, and there were like 7 Olympic high jumpers there. I mean, his life has really affected a lot of people.
Yeah, and for the people who don't know, Dick Fosbury invented the Fosbury flop,
which is a prominent chapter in my second book,
which is also overcome an obstacle.
Well,
if anybody overcame an obstacle,
he did it with a high jump. That's true. This is called Eureka, and this was commissioned by Xerox, an Olympic sponsor who wanted to distinguish themselves as being the innovative Olympic sponsor. So they asked a bunch of Olympians, what are the innovations in your sport? And being an Olympic trivia buff, I came up with a dozen. And they said, maybe you ought to write the book. So I did. And I interviewed a lot of people, including Dick Fosbury, and asked him about how did he come up with the idea and all those stories. So that is in here as well. And I had the privilege of serving with Dick on the, it's called USOPA, U.S. Olympians and Paralympians Association, our Olympic alumni. And Dick was the president. I'm a past president. He was the president and really devoted a great deal of time to that. And then as I indicated, I'm an Olympic trivia buff. And I was sitting next to the executive director of the U.S. Olympic Museum, and I was peppering him with trivia. He said, you ought to write a book, and he'll publish it. So I did. and this is published by the Olympic Museum. It's got the Olympic rings on the cover. It's got wonderful stories, and it's created sort of like a game. Remember the game 20 Questions?
Sure.
Okay, so I read the question, and then I even give you a hint, and you get to ask me 20 questions, yes or no, and you can come up with the answer. So that's the whole idea behind this book. And there's lots of wonderful stories, including, for example, who is the first person to break the world record using the Fosbury flop? You may ask me 20 questions.
Who is the first person?
No, yes or no questions.
Okay.
Who is the first person to break a world record using the Fosbury flop? Now, the obvious question is, or the obvious
male
answer,
or female?
Who?
Male or female would be my first
All right, that's your
question.
first question. The answer is male. Okay, that's one down. You got 19 to go.
Wait a second. Do you really think a female could have broken the world record?
She could break a women's high jump world record.
Okay.
It's a fair question.
Okay.
So you got 19 to go. And this is how the game is played.
Is he larger than a bread box?
Yes. Yeah, you got 18. So you can see how the game is played, and that's this particular book. So
is his name Dick Fosbury?
no.
Really?
That caught you by surprise, didn't it? Yeah, it wasn't Dick. Dick set the Olympic record, got a gold medal, but he never broke a world record using the flop.
Who had the world record? Valerie Brumel? Brumel?
I think it was Brumel.
Yeah.
Correct.
So we need to know
who's the first person to break a world record in the high jump using the Fosbury. You don't have to answer that now. We'll let you think about it.
we could be here all night.
You could be thinking about it for the next couple of decades, and you're not going to get the answer out of it.
So what do you want us to do? You want us to pick a book?
You got if you get to choose one of these to take home, which of these would be most interesting to you? And I'll autograph it after the show. I'm happy to do that.
Oh, I would definitely go with Awaken.
That's the one your choice?
Great. I would go with Eureka.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, there you go. Then
you look surprised. You expected us to.
I was expecting you to play over here.
But I want the true stories of how the innovations changed the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
How many all the motivation I could get? I'm going to go with that.
Okay, excellent. And how many innovations can you recall in Olympic sport history?
Well,
everybody says Fosbury's flop. Okay, yeah, that's true.
Well, that's why I need to read the book.
Yeah, exactly. There's a bunch in there. Anyway, so enough about me. How about you? What do you think about my books?
I like your style. We mentioned before we went on air, we talked that you were good friends with Donna Di Verona, who was a friend of the show. We interviewed her. And
she was only training for 3 or 4 years, even less time than John before she
made her first Olympic team at age 13.
Yeah, well, that's
so there's not a lot of time before that to begin with, and then she won her medals when she was 17. And I've got lots of Donna trivia questions. She was the first woman to wear a leopard skin swimsuit. The pattern, instead of the blue with the white stripe, she wore a leopard skin, and everybody went, ooh.
Well, she was on the cover of Time, I guess.
Sports Illustrated.
Sports Illustrated, when she was about 16, 15,
17. So I think leading into the 1964 Olympic Games.
Well, my question, I asked her the question too. I believe I did anyway, looking back. But I'm going to ask you the question because who you are and what you do and what you've done. She surprised me because she doesn't look like a swimmer. You know what I mean? I think swimmers are tall and thin. That's the way I look at them, my swimmers. I mean, naive, maybe, I don't know, but she doesn't strike me as at a young age, the amount of records she broke. I mean, it's incredible to me.
I think what's happening is you are looking at the current demographic of Olympic swimmers, and now women are much more athletically inclined. When Donna was competing, there was no scholarships for women. It was very rare for a woman to be praised for being athletic. And so the body styles we see today are generated through a a lifetime of role models, etc. You are correct. Most swimmers are tall and slender, but not all. Individual medley and breaststrokers are a little shorter, a little wider. They kick sideways. And Donna was an IM swimmer. So in that sense, she wouldn't be the stereotypical physical body that you would expect.
Right.
I used to be the tallest Olympic swimming champion in history. I'm now number 47.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah, because guys 6'6" used to automatically play basketball. Now 6'6" is too short to play a power forward. So now guys my height would come into other sports like swimming or volleyball. So it's no longer strange to see somebody of my height in the pool. And it's also no longer strange to see African Americans in the pool. The sport, the world is opening up, and sport is a reflection of society. Sometimes it leads society, but I think it's a reflection of society.
So the stereotypes are being shattered every day.
Of course, every day. Not that they're always wrong, but they're not necessarily universal. So it's good to see something different. I read today, the U.S. Olympic Committee has chosen a swimmer from Suriname who won gold in 1988 to be the head Olympic coach for the U.S. team in Paris.
Wow.
African American.
Wow.
I mean, this is, as you say, stereotypes are being shattered every day.
Wow.
Anthony Nesty is his name.
Let me tell Billy how we met. In 1981, I shot my first movie, and John was one of the stars of it. Now, John probably doesn't remember that day, but I was at the car wash about 3 weeks ago, and I looked across and I said, I think that's John Naber. So I'll venture a guess and say John, and it was John. It was John. So 43 years later, here we are.
Are you kidding me? That's how you guys after 43 years, you ran into each other at the car wash, and neither one of you were working the car wash.
He never calls. He never writes. I have to wait 43 years.
He lives 2 miles from here.
Yeah.
What was the first movie?
Well,
documentary, right?
Why don't we? I had a photo of us together, all of us together. It was me, John, Jay Thomas was the host, Kathy Rigby, Tyrone Youngs, Pat Hayden, and we took a picture of us all. And I couldn't. I tore the house apart. I couldn't find it, but I did find the movie. So, Derek, can you roll
video footage?
John's clip of that movie.
My name's John Naber. I was just practicing some of the French I picked up when I swam at the Olympics in Montreal.
Swam? That's an understatement. I mean, you set 4 world records. John, you got more gold than Fort Knox.
Well, the Russians and the Germans were pretty tough, but with my training and hard work, eventually paid off in the end. Along with good eating habits, of course.
And you're a French fry fanatic?
No, being a fanatic about any one kind of food is wrong. But making the foods you like to eat a regular part of your meals, that's what good nutrition's all about.
So you're telling me that one of Kathy Rigby's hamburgers or Ty Young's milkshakes or even a basket of John Naber's French fries, all these things can be a part of my getting in shape diet?
Now you're catching on. But don't forget, what's a burger without a bun? And that's your 4th basic food group, breads and cereal.
But, I have something nutritious from all 4 basic food groups here. And they all taste terrific. Who needs cauliflower juice?
Now wait a minute. You may not like cauliflower, but some pretty healthy people do. You eat what you like and let your friends eat what they like. Just keep in mind the 4 basic food groups.
Yeah, fine. Hold the cauliflower. Pass me the pizza.
Did someone say pass?
Pat Hayden brings back stirring memories, doesn't he? You still don't remember. Now you've seen it 43 years later, and you still don't remember doing it.
I'm going to record this show and take that video and add it to my clip reel.
Yeah, for sure.
I should have said pommes frites.
Pommes frites. I think that was the leading line.
Oh, there it is. I missed it. Okay. Well, French for French fry, of course.
French for French fry, of course. You still have the $1,000 that I gave you for doing that movie?
In 1981, it was 5 years after the Olympics, but the U.S. did not send a team to the 1980 games. That was the year we boycotted Moscow. And as a result, I was still the flavor of the month. Most Olympians get a 4-year window to enjoy the invitations that come. I enjoyed an 8-year window. And so, had we gone to Moscow, you might have had somebody else, probably a Matt Biondi or a Rowdy Gates.
No, I would have had John Naber.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Frank.
One of the things that when I was doing the research about you for the interview, of course, was that blew me away. Your record stood for 7 years after.
At the time, that was a big deal.
Any time in swimming, isn't that a big deal?
Because records do fall so quickly. Yeah.
In swimming.
Yeah, at the time, that was the case. There's now world records in swimming that are like 20 years old. Once again, the hyperbolic curve, it's a lot harder to get faster when the record was set by a Michael Phelps. But even he has already lost some of his world records.
Wow. I had read, and I don't know, when I was a kid, just from the old Tarzan movies, I was a big Johnny Weissmuller fan.
Me too.
As a kid. And I had read that his Olympic records, which were 23, is that what we think?
28 and 32, I believe.
28 and 32. That he would have a hard time making a high school swimming team with those records.
Those times are not competitive today. He was the first human being to go 100 meters in less than a minute. And I had the chance to meet him briefly before he passed. And his son actually asked me to speak at his funeral.
Wow.
And I didn't know him that well. I didn't know what to say. If I were to have done it again, I would say, I'd ask everybody just in silence, remember his Tarzan yell.
Yeah.
And we all can. We all know it, right?
Without a doubt.
That's the impact he left. And then the other USC Olympic swimming champion who also played Tarzan was
Mike Henry?
Buster Crabbe.
Buster Crabbe.
Yeah.
Wow, Buster Crabbe. I knew I would get that if I should have hung on a little bit longer.
No worries. Anyway, lots of
Flash good.
What I love, the reason I mention all these stories is because I like to say Olympic champions are not extraordinary people. We're ordinary people who found a way to accomplish extraordinary results. And if you use the process that Olympians use, you're likely to get extraordinary results. Awaken the Olympian Within is not trying to make everybody into a swimmer, but rather use the lessons that Olympians have learned to become better people, more efficient, more effective, happier people. Wow. That's the value of sport. Sport is supposed to prepare athletes for life after sport. If it doesn't do that, it's not doing a good job. So cheating in sport doesn't teach you anything. You may get a prize, you may get a medal. If I leave the room and left my gold medal on the floor and you found it, does that make you a good swimmer because you have a gold medal? No, it's the lessons that we learn through sport that empower us to become better human beings.
Yeah, it's hard work and discipline, and that can't go wrong no matter where you go with it. I mean,
among many other skills, you are absolutely right.
First you have talent, but then you have to nurture that talent.
You don't have to have talent to benefit from the life lessons.
Correct.
There are a lot of kids who swam in the pool with me. They didn't go to the Olympics. They didn't win medals, but they benefited from the experience.
Absolutely.
So anyway, talent's a part of it, and it's helpful.
Talent's a part of it to become an Olympic champion.
Yeah, it's very helpful to win. Yes, to be at the top of the pyramid.
You coached, you worked, you played, you swam for some pretty successful coaches, Peter Dalen at USC, Doc Councilman with the Olympics.
Yeah.
What did you pick up from each of them?
Wow. I did a talk called What I Learned from Each of My Coaches. And it's a 45-minute talk, which I won't burden you with all of that now. But my first swim coach was Bob Whitmore, a high school biology teacher who didn't know a thing about swimming, but he made it fun. And if workout can be made fun, you'll come back for the second day and you'll improve. My second coach was George French. And he actually got in the water with a scuba tank faceplate, and he looked at me above and below the water, and he critiqued my fundamental skills. So he taught me the stroke mechanics. When I tried out for his team, I swam an individual medley, which is 2 lengths of each stroke. And at the end of that, he said, I think you're going to be a good backstroker. I didn't know that at the time. I swam freestyle and butterfly at the time, but he was able to spot that right away. Peter Dalen, of course, he is the kind of guy who can polish a rough gemstone and make it glimmer in the sunlight. Peter took an American record holder in the backstroke, and he expanded my repertoire to include Olympic medal winning freestyle, among other things. And he did that with lots of swimmers. Had USC competed as a country in the Olympics in Montreal, we would have finished 6th or 7th, tied with Poland, in large part because of his swimmers. And he led us to 4 consecutive NCAA titles. So my team never lost a dual meet, a conference meet, or a national championship. Doc Councilman at the Olympic team, he brought a bunch of disparate individuals If I was going to lose the backstroke, it was going to be likely to Cal Berkeley's Peter Rocca. If I'm going to win the freestyle, I got to beat American Bruce Furness. And there was tension at the dinner table. And Coach Councilman said, gentlemen, congratulations, you've made the Olympic team. I'd now like to share with you my goal for this team. Said each of you have your own goals for your events, but I think the American men can win every race in this year's Olympic program. And I think the American men can win more medals than the rest of the world in the sport of swimming. And I think these American men can win more medals than the rest of the U.S. Olympic team, all other sports combined. And what that did is it made the backstrokers suddenly care about the breaststrokers' performance.
Mhm.
Wow.
It made the relay swimmers cheer for the distance swimmers. It made all of a sudden we were all like, come on, let's go. And nobody got left behind. The bus never went to work out with somebody missing. And we're all encouraging each other, and good workout sets were applauded and cheered. And as a result, in 13 races in Montreal, Americans were unable to win 1 gold, 1 silver, and 6 of the bronze. I stood on the award stand twice to see 3 American flags and hear the national anthem. It was so overwhelming that 4 years later, the International Swimming Governing Body changed the rules, and now nations are only allowed to enter 2 swimmers per event because we were so dominant that year. So now Michael Phelps is one of 2 American swimmers in each event because we're not allowed a third because of that success.
Wow.
23 out of 30, is that right? With the gold medals in the Olympics?
Well, in the men's races, it was 12 out of 13. And the women, you may recall, ran into a buzzsaw called the East German
Right.
team. And they
that
won.
was the steroid
Yeah.
incident.
Correct. So American women only won 1 gold, but the American men were extremely dominant.
Wow.
And you had some characters at the 76 Olympics, didn't you?
Oh, there's characters in every team. If I ever write a memoir about swimming at USC, we've got such colorful characters, and many of them made the Olympic team with me. I mentioned Bruce Furness. He was the guy in the 200-meter freestyle that beat me after I led the race for 199 meters of 200 meters. And I was the first guy over to congratulate him because he was a Trojan teammate of mine.
Mhm.
In fact, at the time, my nickname was Snake and his nickname was Mongoose. And we weren't competitors, we weren't predators. We called each other compreditors. And so when he won, I was happy to celebrate his victory. He was quick to celebrate mine. That evening, our parents were going to take us out to dinner. But after every Olympic swimming championship, there's a mandatory blood test or urine test. There's a mandatory press conference. And when we finished that, the place had emptied out. And the 2 of us are walking from the press conference past a warm down pool. This is an Olympic-sized pool underneath the bleachers. It's only 4 lanes wide. It's where swimmers loosen up before and after a race. And Bruce said, we just raced head to head, but day after tomorrow, we're going to be teammates on a relay. And you know what? They pulled us out of the water so fast, I didn't loosen down after the race. Maybe we should get in the water and loosen down. Well, our parents are waiting for us for dinner, but they can wait another 5 minutes. So we took off our sweats, we jumped into the pool, and we swam. Our Olympic race was 4 lengths of the pool. So we swam together almost like synchronized swimmers, breathing towards each other, nice and comfortable. 1 flip turn, we came back. 2nd flip turn, we came back. We went down a 3rd flip turn. We covered 175 meters, and then we stop in the middle of the water, and my arms are draped across the lane line, and I'm feeling good. My heart rate's normal. My breathing is normal. And Bruce looks at me, and he says, "You want to race?" And I said, "Oh, come on." And I took off. And I swam as fast as I could, reaching for the wall. He grabs my suit. He pulls me back, and we wrestle in the water like two wet minks. And we get out of the water laughing. We totally undone the swim down. But here we were, an hour after racing head-to-head for the world title in front of the cameras of the world, and we're still competitors. We couldn't let it go. And that, to me, is one of my favorite memories of those Olympics, is sharing that moment with Bruce, the guy who beat me for my 5th gold medal, handed me a silver medal, but to this day is one of my closest friends.
It sort of sounds like the end of Rocky 2.
Yeah, or Rocky 1, where he's boxing with Apollo.
Ain't gonna be no rematch. Ding, ding.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
great. That's great.
Yeah.
That is a great story. Really great story.
And you had some characters at the Olympics also as teammates. Jenner was there. He was triathlon, decathlon champion.
champion.
Nadia Comaneci was there.
Sugar Ray Leonard,
Sugar Ray
Edwin
Leonard.
Moses, Greg Louganis won his first Olympic medal. I think it's historic because it's what I refer to as the last of the pre-boycott Olympics. 1980, we didn't go. In 1984, they didn't come. And so in 1988, many of the Russian athletes competed for other countries. The wall had come down. Communism was in retreat. So in 76, there was good guys and bad guys. Somebody to root for, somebody to root against.
Right.
That's not quite the case in the Olympics today. Now we're happy to see Sergei Bubka clear the vaulting pole. We're happy to watch athletes succeed. We love Americans, but most people go to a world championship and 48% of the audience comes out disappointed because their team lost. But in the Olympics, only the mother of the silver medalist comes out disappointed. Everybody else is just happy to watch a world record or see great. We cheered for Usain Bolt. He's not American. He beat the Americans, right? But we love Nadia Comaneci. We love those stories because Alberto Tomba or the Herminator, any number of stories. And that's the good part about the Olympics, is it brings us all together around excellence as a virtue, not competition as a means to crush an opponent. The word I'm rambling. I apologize.
That's okay.
The word competition comes from the original Latin, com, meaning together, petition, meaning to seek. Competition is a joint journey of discovery. We're going to discover who's the better swimmer. How do we do that? Well, let's set up some rules and make the course uniform, etc. It's like two kids standing back to back, discovering who's taller. But if somebody stands on their tiptoes, you're not learning the truth, right? So cheating diminishes the value of competition. And that's why I love the Olympic movement, even though there are cheaters, but we try to catch them and we try to punish them. And in that sense, that's a really good thing. And if you think about it, the Olympic movement is the only movement where at the opening ceremony, they all raise their hand and promise to follow the rules. The athlete's oath during the opening ceremonies. You don't see that at the Super Bowl. You don't see that at the World Series. You don't see that at the Indy 500. But at the Olympics, that's a critical element of the opening ceremony. One athlete, on behalf of all of them, and everyone else raises their hand, and they promise to abide by the rules. And I think that's a really good thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a remarkable thing. It's a really good thing. And like you said, when you were in Greece, you got this whole idea just from watching the celebration of what it was all about.
And it wasn't my idea. Baron Pierre de Coubertin in 1894 promoted the modern Olympic Games. That's the birth date of the modern Olympic movement. And he said the same as those people. Let's use sport to make the world a better place. And he wasn't an athlete. He was, guess what? A teacher, an educator. And that's the purpose of the Olympic movement, is to educate and bring the world together and use sport to make it a better place.
Why don't you run down the four races that you won the gold medals in?
I am known predominantly as being a backstroker. And so I won the 100-meter backstroke and the 200-meter backstroke, and I swam the backstroke leg of the medley relay. I also was part of a winning gold medal 4x200 freestyle relay, the same event where I earned the silver medal in the freestyle. So 2 backstroke, 2 relay golds, and then 1 freestyle silver medal. That would have been a record medals in a single Olympics had it not been for the guy 4 years before, Mark Spitz.
I knew the answer to that question.
You did.
So how did it feel the first time you won the gold? The first time you were standing on that block, the first time you heard the Star Spangled Banner.
Exactly. I don't know that you'll like my answer because it's not what you would expect. My first gold medal in the 100-meter backstroke came 45 minutes before I had to race for the silver medal in the 200 freestyle. So on the award stand, when you want to soak it in, you want to just embrace the movement and feel the chills and your hair going up, I was saying to myself, John, ignore it. Down, boy, down, just relax. So I stood very stern and I didn't smile and I didn't wave very much. I got my medal. I immediately went down and warmed down and got ready for my next race. The second time I got a medal, it was a silver. It wasn't a gold. Now, there are 3 American flags. I'm very proud of my friend Bruce, but it wasn't a gold medal. So I can't say I felt the best. But if I were to summarize what should it feel like when you win a gold medal at the Olympics, I say it should feel like being on top of Mount Everest. On this moment, on this day, I'm the tallest man on the planet. It doesn't mean that tomorrow I'd win the race, It doesn't mean that I'm the tallest that there's ever been. A world record means that, but a gold medal at the Olympics just means today I get to say I'm the best in the world. And there are a lot of people who think they're the world's best doctor or best lawyer or best businessman or best broadcaster or best fireman or best producer. But how do you prove it? At the Olympics, you get to say, on that day, I got to prove it. Everybody was there and I beat them.
It's like the John L. Sullivan quote, I can lick any man in the house. I know I can do it.
But you got to be in the house.
It's like, I remember once Andre Agassi told me, he said, I don't know how you guys do it in showbiz. You know, it's so subjective. If somebody says, you suck, Andre, I just say, look at the scoreboard. Who won?
That's the measure. That's the measure. Exactly.
Always scoreboard.
Yeah. Now the coaches will teach you, try to make your stroke look beautiful. There's a right way and a wrong way to do it. But at the end, it's not the most beautiful stroke that wins. Usually it is, but not always. Janet Evans, you might remember her,
sure.
the sprint freestyler or the distance freestyler. She had what I would call a windmill stroke. Her arms were straight on the recovery and she spun like a windmill. Not very elegant, but certainly effective. And she won those gold medals in 1988 and two more in 92 and 96. So she proves the point. You don't have to be beautiful. They don't measure that. You ought to seek to enjoy the results of what's actually being measured.
Yeah. I'll tell you a little story that's off the beaten path. And I don't even know if you remember the name Wayne Pugh, but Wayne was a swimmer at UCLA and he won the Pac 8 individual medley in 1969 and again in 1970 when he was getting ready to swim for the Olympic trials in 72. In 71 he broke his foot running down the stairs in the earthquake at UCLA and he couldn't compete. But
it's a heartbreak.
It was a heartbreak.
May I tell you a story to equal that?
Sure.
In 1971, an American swimmer at USC named Frank Heckel was a pre-med student, was married, and had a part-time job. And he won 6 gold medals at the Pan American Games in 1971. Everybody said, you're the guy who's going to do it all in Munich next year. So, listening to them, he dropped out of school. He asked his wife to move home with her mom for a year. He dropped out his job and he focused entirely on swimming. And in 1972, he did not even make the team. All the eggs were in one basket, an awful lot of pressure to put on one individual. And that to me is a life lesson. It's a horrible, sad tale.
Sure.
He's a Trojan teammate and he was a role model to me. But my point being is if you put all your eggs in that basket, and that basket only comes around once every 4 years, what an unfortunate emphasis, a set of priorities.
Yep.
Had he continued his winning ways, had he stuck with the process, he probably would have won 5 or 6 medals in Munich, and we'd know his name on a Wheaties box. Right?
Yeah. By the way, the Wheaties box that you're on.
I have a Wheaties box at home that General Mills made for me when I gave him a speech 20 years ago. I was never on the official Wheaties box.
Well, it counts to me.
Thank you.
Were you a pool rat? Were you like after the training and everything? Did you find yourself training more than competitors?
I loved the workouts when I was a competitive swimmer. I told you I wasn't a good athlete, and I'm not a land mammal. And to make my point, I'm the only athlete I know who literally, I'm telling the truth, was able to dive off a diving board and miss the water. And I was also able to go over the handlebars of a stationary bicycle. So I'm not so where else can I go to exercise? Of course, I swim now. Pasadena has the Rose Bowl Aquatic Center, a 50-meter long body tank of water, which is what we like to swim in.
Right.
And there's a bunch of people my age that I love to train with. We call ourselves the inner circle, and we swim in circles. And I'm not racing. I don't compete. But I love the feeling. It's correct. I didn't do it for 30 years. After the Olympics, I was traveling a lot, and all those hotels that advertise Olympic-sized pools,
they don't have them.
They don't have Olympic-sized pools. No. And any pool that's smaller than an Olympic-sized pool will bang my head pushing off the wall. So I didn't swim for exercise. I traveled and ran through airports and gave speeches and stuff. But now I'm easing toward retirement. I'm not chasing the business. I still do it, but not as much. I love the Rose Parade here in Pasadena every January 1st. And ABC, my original employer, the company that I did the Wide World of Sports with, they've invited me to be their street side reporter. And so I get to interview folks at the Rose Parade every year.
How long were you at ABC Wide World of Sports?
You know, Wide World of Sports is no longer on the air, so many of your viewers may not remember it, but it was a really good multi-sport example, and it brought swimming and track and wrestling and weightlifting into people's living rooms outside of the Olympics. I owe them a great deal of gratitude because they inspired me. I was one of their broadcasters, play-by-play, not just for swimming, but for many other sports. I've covered 30 Olympic sports in non-Olympic years. And I was on Wide World of Sports probably for 7 to 10 years.
That's a pretty good run.
Oh, yeah, I had a good time. And in fact, what's really fun, you remember Rune Arledge was the executive producer.
Sure.
Anybody who worked for Rune is like a basketball player who played for John Wooden.
Mm-hmm.
They all remember him and the lessons he taught. And we meet once a month on a live Zoom chat from all over the country.
Once a month.
Once a month. The alumni, they get together and they talk, and they invite guests to come in, and Donna came in and spoke, and Mark Spitz comes in and speaks. So it's a real fun gathering to, what do they say? The older we get, the better we were.
Yeah.
That would be us. So we remember our story. It's a chance to sit around and tell lies.
I remember Wide World Sports actually had hurling on one time. They had the Irish sport.
Yeah,
they
big
showed
rock.
hurling.
They had
And they
hurling.
called it controlled mayhem, which I thought was a terrific adjective for hurling. Controlled mayhem.
Your old man was a hurler, wasn't
Yeah,
he?
he was a hurler. My old man was a hurler. That's how we got to this country with him hurling.
There was a party celebrating 40 years of Wide World of Sports in New York City. And Howard Cosell and Muhammad Ali showed up, and Donna DeVerona came, and I was invited. But the one guy who got the most applause was Vinko Bogataj.
Thrill of victory in the agony of defeat.
Wow.
Thank you.
The long jumper who crashed and
Wow.
tumbled.
Wow.
Yeah, he got the standing ovation. It was wonderful.
That's
Why don't you? It seems like a good time for you to tell us the John Wooden Louis Zamparelli story.
Okay, Louis Zamperini, Olympic track athlete from the 1932-36 era. They wrote the book Unbroken, and they made the movie Unbroken. He is a USC Trojan. He's an Olympic track and field guy. In fact, his last lap of the 5,000 meters, he closed 50 yards on the leaders. He didn't win a medal, but he was so powerful that Adolf Hitler himself wanted to meet the man.
Is this the guy who was in the concentration camp?
Yep.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
You remember the story? Wonderful story. I met Louis in 1983, some USC fundraiser on the floor of the Coliseum, and an alumni comes over and he says, "You got to meet Louis Zamperini." I said, "Why?" He's a Trojan, he's an Olympian, he's a hero. So I went over and I started talking to him, and we had a lot in common. We're both Christians, we're both Trojans, we're both Olympians. And in 1983, the 84 Olympics were just a year away. So there were a lot of functions, a lot of gatherings to get together. So I would drive by Louis' house, pick him up, and we'd go together to a golf tournament or a dinner, and we'd spend time telling stories. It wasn't until 1998 that I heard about his World War II exploits. We just talked about USC and the Olympics and Jesus, and we had a great old time. But in 1988, the Olympics were in Nagano in Japan, in a city that was very close to the location of the POW camp. Wow. So CBS, the rights holder that year, did an up close and personal on Louis. And I'm watching this on TV thinking, wow, Grandpa won the Nobel Prize and never mentioned it. Yeah, wow. And so as a result, at the time, I was president of the Olympic alumni, and I got a phone call from Crystal Cruise Lines, the ocean cruise liner. They were going to park one of their boats in the Sydney Harbor as a hotel during the Olympics. They were going to cruise from San Francisco to Australia, and they wanted, because it's all water, they wanted some Olympians on board to lecture, to give speeches about the Olympics. And I said, you got to bring Louis. So Louis did the passing. He got the greatest ratings of any lecturer on the ship. And we enjoyed the Olympics in Sydney together and had a marvelous time.
And in 98, he must have been about in his mid-80s?
Not even that. No. He wasn't that old. I would put him in his 60s. He was 87 when he passed.
Oh, he was? I thought he was almost 100.
I'm sorry. He was 97 when he passed.
Right, that's what I thought. 97
when he passed. So we back it up. So anyway, I'm getting to the Wooden story.
Okay.
Keep
going with Zamparelli. That's fine.
Yeah, it's a
happy
great
to tell.
story.
Oh, it's amazing, man. And he is, to my memory, he carries no grudge. He has no ill will. What made the book so remarkable was not what he went through, but how he got out of it. Because after World War II was over, when the atomic bomb was dropped, the Japanese guards disappeared, the Americans in the POW camp were rescued, he came home, and his goal in life was to just earn enough money to go back and kill this abusive guard called the Bird. And every night he would have nightmares of being tortured by the Bird. And one morning he woke up with his hands around his wife's throat, thinking she was the Bird. Of course, that scared the daylights out of her. And she said, I can't live like this. I think we need to separate or get a divorce. And he didn't want that. The next night, she comes home and she says, I've changed my mind. And he said, wonderful. Why? And she said, I heard this preacher in a tent revival in downtown Los Angeles named Billy Graham, and he told me I shouldn't divorce you, so I won't. But I want you to come hear him. And she brought Louis back where he found Jesus. He became a missionary, and guess where he went? Japan. And he preached the gospel of forgiveness in Japan. They were looking for the Bird. The Bird's children were not willing to let their father talk to Louis. So they never met face to face. But the forgiveness was extended. And Louis said, those nightmares that I had every night, the day after the Billy Graham revival meeting, the nightmares went away. And I haven't had one since. By letting go, by learning forgiveness, he was able to put that away. So anyway, and Laura Hillenbrand wrote the book Unbroken, and it came out in 2010. And at the time, she was suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome. She could not travel and do a book tour. So Random House asked Louis, would he travel and do the book tour? And at the time, I said, Louis, let me carry your luggage. And so I was able to help manage his career and schedule those appointments and invite people around. And one of those appointments, I got a phone call from a 40-year-old Hollywood screenwriter, a beautiful blonde, who said, I know John Wooden, and I know that John Wooden and Louis Zamperini would have a wonderful conversation if we could get them together for lunch. And so we did. I drove Louis, Ty brought John, and the four of us sat around having a wonderful conversation. Both of them have spent a lifetime answering questions and telling stories. So it was a delightful conversation. And that's the memory that I have. And I knew Coach Wooden beforehand because I had the privilege of introducing him as a teacher. But my favorite part of this story is that following the luncheon, we're walking back to our car, and the 40-year-old screenwriter says to Louis, Louis, are you still able to run fast? And he goes, I don't know. And she says, if you and I were to race to that car about 50 yards away, who would win? And Louis says, I don't know. Let's find out. And he says, John, would you give us a starting command? So I go, okay, on your marks, get set, go. And the two of them go running for the car. And being the politician, I call it a dead heat. Perfect tie. And they're laughing, and she's got her arm around his shoulders. And she says, Louis, if you were just 10 years younger, and she winks at him, and quick as a whip, he says, girl, if I was 10 years younger, you might be too old for me.
Perfect. That's a great story.
That's a great story.
Louis enjoyed making people laugh. He never felt pity. He never felt like he was a victim or a hero. He called himself a survivor.
And he never met the Bird?
He never met the Bird after World War II. We did see the Bird on the CBS feature, The Up Close and Personal. They did interview him, but the two of them never met.
Wow.
So anyway, my role model as what life after the Olympics should be comes from Louis Zamperini.
Okay, let me ask you a question that just occurred to me. Who would you put on a USC sports Mount Rushmore?
Oh my. Well, I was asked to introduce Brad Buddy in an alumni program. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'd love to talk about all these football statistics, but I'm an Olympian. I don't follow minor sports. So USC would put football players in the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about USC. I'm talking about who you would put in your Mount Rushmore of USC athletes that, encompass all the values that you hold dear.
That's the question. Right. That's the question. I would have liked to put John Wayne, Marion Morrison on there because he was a member of the USC football team, but I don't know his values. He's conservative, but I don't know. I didn't get to know him that well. I knew Buster Crabbe, and I liked his story. I think Sammy Lee deserves place on the hall. Sammy Lee is America's first Asian American Olympic champion, and he used to train here in Pasadena.
Right.
On International Day, there was a pool in the south end of Brookside Park called the Brookside Plunge, and they would empty it every Tuesday night and refill it in time for Wednesday morning. So the people of color were invited to come swim on Tuesdays.
So they could dump the pool.
It was an embarrassment at the time, but Sammy came and he dove, And he dove at Occidental, and he got his doctorate at USC and went on to serve in great distinction as a military veteran. And he won. He successfully defended his gold medal on the 10-meter platform. Remarkable guy, and what the values he talked about life after the Olympics. I would definitely put Sammy Lee on that podium.
Okay, I'll give you the second one, Louis Zamperini.
Yeah, you'd have to do that for the values purpose, of course. I was thinking, how many gold medalists do we have? USC has a lot of gold medalists. I might add Janet Evans. She won a bunch of medals, but she also chose to leave Stanford and come to USC to finish her training. There's a story interesting there. The NCAA decided that it would not allow any athlete to train more than 20 hours a week. If you're going to be a student athlete, you have to limit the number of hours in the water. And that might be true for athletes who can't graduate. But if you were a smart kid with an A minus or a B plus average, you should be allowed to choose how many. And that Janet said, I can't live under those rules. So she left Stanford, came and trained at USC, not as an eligible NCAA athlete, but just became a Trojan. And she's now leading the athlete movement at the LA 2028 Olympics over in West LA.
Great.
And she, of course, it was the one who handed the Olympic flame to Muhammad Ali when he passed it up
in Atlanta.
In Atlanta, correct. So I'd certainly include her. Boy, there's a lot of really good ones. Boy, I'm going to get embarrassed if I put some on and somebody else.
Okay, so I'll let you off with three.
That's good.
And then the fourth one could be any number of people.
Yes.
Including John Naber.
I'm okay with that.
You said Buster Crabbe had an interesting story, and I'm sure 90% of our audience have no idea who Buster Crabbe is. But I do.
Oh, good.
And I remember Buster Crabbe. And just a quick anecdote. What story would that be?
Well, in 1932, America won one gold medal thanks to Buster Crabbe in the 400-meter freestyle. He was a USC Trojan. Japan came in and they dominated many of the distance events, and it really put America on notice that if you're going to win medals, you got to be good. Now, Buster Crabbe was a matinee handsome idol, and he followed Johnny Weissmuller in the role of Tarzan, but he also played Flash Gordon. Exactly. So he made the transition from sport into show business. I don't know if he was, the two of them were among the first. Sonia Henney would probably be the most famous one. But in that instance, so my interesting story about Buster Crabbe and Johnny Weissmuller is that neither one of them got an Academy Award, but one Olympic champion has his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, not on the ground, but on the wall. You have 20 questions. It's in the book.
And it's not Buster Crabbe?
And it's not Buster Crabbe.
Interesting.
Buster Crabbe and Johnny Weissmuller had their stars on the ground, but this gold medalist has his star on the wall. So interesting.
I got to give you 6 degrees of separation just for real quick, because you mentioned Sonia Henney. Sonia Henney, my father, that was his first job. He was Sonia Henney's chauffeur when he came to America.
How about that?
Back in 1950.
Does he have comments? Did he say her character was lovely, was charming, or she was?
No, he actually said she was always very good to him.
That's what I like about the Olympians, that they're pretty ordinary folks. They're relatively normal, and in those days, it was rare to make more than 1 or 2 Olympic teams. You couldn't be a professional Olympian, so you had to get on with your life. And as a result, people did not use their Olympic credentials as a badge. I'm entitled to first class travel, and you got to pay my fee, and you can see my agent and all this stuff. No. Most Olympians are really, really normal folk.
You mentioned you're swimming again down at the Rose Bowl. My son-in-law, Charlie Moore, swims at the Rose Bowl at 5 o'clock in the mornings because he was a star water polo player at Santa Clara.
Oh, it's wonderful.
So he still swims down at the Rose Bowl at 5 a.m. on mornings when he can get up.
The sport of swimming in the United States has a foundation whose goal is to raise money to make sure everybody learns how to swim, because death by drowning is way, way more frequent than you would imagine. It's like the number 1 or 2 cause of death of children under the age of 10. I mean, it's so the Rose Bowl Aquatic Center was created at the old site of the Brookside Plunge to help teach people how to swim. And it's a nonprofit 501c3 organization that provides free swimming lessons to every 3rd grader in Pasadena. We provide the swimsuits, the goggles, the towels, and a little backpack. And the school provides a teacher and a bus. And every day, these kids come down and they learn how to swim, so that it is our desire no third grader can graduate without knowing how to swim. And that's one of the things we do. And then once we teach them how to swim, for those who want to join a swim team or a water polo team or a dive team who cannot afford the coach's dues, we provide a financial assistance grant. So these scholarships allow kids who fall into the pool and discover their love of the water, and many people do. We can take them all the way to the Olympics, we hope.
I can't believe I'm going to admit this on camera, but I can't swim.
Well, you need to come down to the Rose Bowl Aquatic Center.
I can't swim.
That's because you walk on the water, Frank? Or you
No,
Shame on you.
I went to a camp. I went to a 6th grade Boy Scout camp, and I went to swimming in the lake, and I almost drowned, and I have been deathly afraid of water ever since.
Come on the boat, Frank. Come on, take out the sailboat. Come on.
And believe me, if I was going to go out on your boat, I wouldn't go out on Gilligan's Island, that's for sure. Because your boat is...
Hour two.
Yeah.
No idea where I'm going, Frank. You'll tell you about it later. You're known for the backstroke. I mean, that was your. Is that your favorite stroke? I mean, obviously you excelled at it, but I mean,
so freestyle is faster. Remember, my coach identified me as a potential backstroker, and I've got very limber shoulders. I've got hyperextended elbows. I'm built for backstroke. I'm built for swimming. I also laughingly say I love to get the sunlight. I don't have to wear goggles. The cameras are good to the backstrokers. But my favorite backstroke story, I forget the year, but the Special Olympics, where Eunice Kennedy Shriver created an opportunity for athletes with mental challenges to compete athletically. She invited me to come as a hugger on the finish line, or an autograph signer, interviewer, presenter of medals. Celebrities love to go to the Special Olympics, and I'm doing things on the field, and there were so many people at the time, you needed a credential to get on the competitive arena. And so a lot of people walking around, but if you have a credential, you're free to go, and I'm signing autographs. And Eunice Kennedy Shriver comes over, and we notice a bunch of flash bulbs popping in the distance. There's a crowd gathered. And I said, "What's going on?" And she goes, "Oh, that's Miss America." I said, "Really?" And she goes, "Yeah, you want to meet her?" I said, "Yeah, I would." So we walk over, and the crowd parts, and Miss America with her diamond tiara and her sash across her chest. And Eunice Kennedy Shriver says, "John Naber, this is Miss America. Miss America is John Naber." And she reaches over and she reads my credential. It says, "John Naber, Olympic backstroker." She goes, "Oh, you're a backstroker. They've asked me to be a hugger."
Yeah, there you go.
That's a terrible story.
I'm just glad I didn't swim the breaststroke.
I was wondering why you didn't mention her name. Now I understand.
Oh, God.
When did you move to Pasadena?
And I graduated from USC in 1977. I lived down in Redondo Beach for a year, got a 1-year lease for an apartment. Traveled a lot of speaking opportunities. My first employer was the Disney company, but they let me do things, the speeches and the broadcasting. And at the end of the year, I looked at my phone bill, and almost all of my social calls were to Pasadena. Friends I knew here would go into Lake Avenue Church, and my social life was up here. So I said, "Why live at the beach? Let me come back to Pasadena." So 1978 is when I moved back here. It's a long time.
And when did you meet your wife?
Met my wife in 1980, late 1980. We were married in mid-81. It's been 42 fantastic years, and we're shooting for 50.
Wow.
Good for you.
That's great. I just went to Europe. We were talking about it before, for my 40th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank
It's
you.
a big number.
Yeah. Where does time go?
I know, but it's fun.
And you had a daughter?
Yes, we have a daughter.
Have a daughter?
Yeah, she still lives here in Arcadia, just 10 minutes down the freeway. And though she's been married more than 10 years, she's yet to bless us with a granddaughter. So we're keeping our fingers crossed and hoping for the best. She went to USC, got a master's degree in library science and information management. Very, very smart gal. We love intellectual conversations, and I never see enough of her. So luckily we're close and want to see more.
I'll be remiss if I didn't ask where she went to high school. Let me guess. Poly?
You're right. You're right. She went to Poly. Chandler for elementary, and then Poly for high school. Well, one of the nice. Well, they're all nice, but it was one of the more accomplished academic institutions. She went to Pepperdine for her undergraduate, a university which granted me an honorary doctorate.
Nice.
You may call me Dr. Naber if
Dr.
you wish.
Naber.
Yeah.
Anybody ever called you doctor?
The doctor of what? Dr. Rotten Socks, maybe. I don't know. Doctor of what?
Dr. Walker, maybe.
So when you were training, when you were training for the Olympics, what are you looking at? What are we talking? 3-4 hours in the pool every day, or what does it take?
Let me begin by saying that I trained in a pool full of swimmers. We didn't all go to the Olympics, but we all did the same kind of workouts. We all covered the same distance. 2 hours before school, 2 hours after school, weight training, 1 hour every other day. That was the ballpark figure. I'm reluctant to say how hard it was because it'll scare a bunch of viewers away from joining the sport. It wasn't that hard if you think progressively. I was really sore the first couple of days, and then you get over the soreness and you get a little bit more conditioning and you can do a little bit more workout, and then you move over a lane and go a little faster. So we all did the same, but I think that the statistic that most impresses, we calculated that I needed to consume 8,000 calories every day. And somebody said Michael Phelps consumed 12,500 calories a day. Just think how long it takes to chew and swallow 12,000 calories. He's sitting at a meal table 3 hours a day, at least, if not more. That's the kind of obsession, that's the kind of commitment that's required if you want to be the best. I don't think the number of hours has grown that much, but the intensity is huge. So they may not go 10 miles. They may only go 8 or 7, but they're going it a lot faster with a lot more rest, going at race pace, if you will. There's a coach who created a workout training manual that used color codes, and he did it by the color of your face at the end of the set. If you're green, you're like dying, and that's how hard it was. They're working very, very hard right now. And many of them are full-time professional athletes. They're not in school. They drop out of school, get a nice fat swimsuit endorsement deal, and then they train full-time for 4, 8, and sometimes 12 years.
So the college, are the swimmers benefiting from NIL now?
Some are. But in my opinion, it's not the best athletes who benefit. It's the prettiest ones.
Right.
The highest paid NIL athletes are influencers who have a lot of viewership because they're pretty and they're blonde and they're articulate and they're cute. And that's good too, but that it's not a measure of athletic skill. So just being a good athlete doesn't guarantee any NIL.
Every time I'm sorry, Billy.
No, good.
When I was hiring students as public production assistants, I always gave the benefit of the doubt to someone who endured 4 years of college education. I mean, as an athlete, because I knew the commitment they had to put in to getting up at 5, 6 in the morning, and I knew hard work wouldn't scare them.
That's my chapter. My chapter is hard work. My chapter is taken from the phrase that I pulled off the side of a root beer bottle. You guys might remember the phrase. 4 words on the side of a bottle that say, if you're not willing to pay the price, you're not entitled to enjoy the flavor. If we're not willing to invest in advance, we don't deserve to see the rewards. What were the 4 words on the side of the bottle? No deposit, no return.
No return. That's great.
You remember?
Yeah,
right?
no
Right?
deposit, no return.
Exactly. And so I say big deposit equals big return. And so it's okay. The T-shirt worn by swimmers before the Barcelona Olympic Games said, no pain, no Spain.
Oh, perfect.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's
so
great.
hard work. You're right. If you go through the hard work, that's the kind of guy I want to hire.
Well, I wrote a chapter in the book about coaching a high school soccer team, and we were the number 1 team in the nation in 2011. I wish I had you. I wish I would have known you to be a motivational speaker to them, because Jesus Christ, I missed out on a world of knowledge. That's for sure.
Well, you flatter me. Nothing pleases me more than being a good teacher of good lessons. Charles Barkley said, "I'm no role model." Well, that's not true. Everybody is a role model to somebody, and the more positive influence we can share, the better the world will be.
That's fair enough. I read or listened. I guess I listened to an interview with Kobe Bryant, and he was talking about consistency. He said, like, if I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go practice, okay, I'm 2 hours ahead of everybody else in the gym or whatever. But he says it's not about the 2 hours. Think about 2 hours every day over the course of 20 years, and that kind of commitment. I mean, Is that what it takes? Is that the kind of thing we're talking about here?
Peter Dalen, my USC swim coach, used to say, the secret to swimming is not how far you swim. And it's not how hard you swim. It's how far are you willing to swim hard. It's the combination of effort and consistency that produces results. I think it was
Coach Wooden said, "Practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect."
I think it was Bobby Knight. Practice makes permanent. Only perfect practice makes perfect. And so you have to have both the combination of that. You got time for a Kobe Bryant story?
Yeah, sure.
Kobe Bryant, everybody knows him as an NBA superstar, but he's also a great Olympian. And in 1988, he made the U.S. Olympic team, as did the coach of the U.S. water polo team, a guy named Terry Schroeder. Now, you may not know Terry Schroeder. I know him very well. He was a 5-time Olympic water polo player, got a silver medal in 88, coached the team in 2008, and he realized as he's marching down the tunnel that the cameras are going to be on Kobe. So he moves back in the parade and he's standing next to Kobe Bryant as they're walking through the tunnel. Now, Kobe Bryant is a legend in China, the Beijing Olympics in 2008. And there's a tourist leaning up against the ropes going, "Kobe, Kobe!" And Terry sees him out of the corner of his eye. And this guy, he can't restrain himself. He jumps over the barricade and he runs towards Kobe Bryant with his arms outstretched. "Kobe, Kobe, Kobe!" Terry Schroeder, water polo player, real tough sport. He knows exactly what to do. He leans down, puts his shoulder into the guy. He pumps him with his elbow, knocks him off his feet, knocks him back into the crowd where the security guards descend upon the tourist and haul him away. Terry Schroeder gets back in line and Kobe Bryant bumps him with his elbow. He goes, "Hey, thanks, man. That was nice." And Terry goes, "It's fine. It's fine." No, thank you. You didn't have to do that. That was a nice. And he reaches up and he takes out his 3-carat diamond stud earring and he hands it to Terry Schroeder. He says, "Give that to your wife." And Terry is looking at a Kobe Bryant stud and he goes, "I can't take it." And he gives it back to Kobe Bryant. I saw Kobe Bryant presenting an award at the annual USA Swimming Golden Goggles Awards program before he passed away. And I said, "Kobe, can you confirm this story?" He goes, "Yeah, that's what happened." Olympic champions are ordinary people. This little repartee, miles from the cameras, just took place. A little human drama with to me, that's what I love about the Olympians. You get those kind of stories. I say sort of like Mary Poppins, if you shake hands with an Olympian, good luck will rub off on you.
I like that.
Wow.
It's about the character, right? Having character behind the scenes where there's no fanfare.
As I said, swimming quickly on your back has limited value in society at large.
I want to close this interview, but I don't want to close this interview and think of, you got so many more stories. You want to share another one with us?
Oh gosh, there's so many stories. Read the book.
Yes, well, I'm going to
read Unbroken to learn about.
This will be read by tomorrow.
Oh,
I guarantee.
I'm delighted.
That's guaranteed.
Well, thank you. You are in some way like Coach Wooden and like Baron Pierre de Coubertin. You are teaching your audience these stories. You're inviting people like us to tell our stories, and I appreciate that. And I hope that they've been some benefit to the viewers.
Me too.
Well, I certainly appreciate you coming by. It's really coming by into the studio. It's a real pleasure to meet
John,
you.
You've been a great guest. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Real pleasure to meet you.
When are you getting your car washed again?
I have the coupon in my pocket.
Oh, you got one of those.
The books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got
You get 11 washes for the price of 10. I'm no spendthrift. I'm a coupon clipper.
Oh, great. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend.
Unbelievable. It was a great wrap-up. Just a great guest, man. Way to go, Frank.
That's it,
Go on
Derek.
the car wash more often.
I wish Derek had his microphone because I'm sure he's got some questions, but he doesn't. So
Thanks for the cup and the mug.
thank you guys again. Bye-bye.
Next week's guests, co-founders of the Big Comedy Network, Scott Henry and Catherine Kamei.
We'll see you next week.